There's been so much obsession over Donald Trump or somebody else. Forget the who for a second. Let's first focus on who we are, but what do we stand for and why we stand for it.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering. America. Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Well, I hope you're ready for a masterclass in dealing with the buffoons in the media, because that's what we have for you today. Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. So what we have for you today is the interview on CNN between perennial buffoonish hack Jim Acosta, maybe the most deranged anti-Trump personality in the media, and Vivek Ramaswamy, who's running for president on the Republican ticket. Jim Acosta is obsessed with Donald Trump, as you'll see in this video. He's also the primary hack I talk about in my book, Schnooks, Crooks, Liars, and Scoundrels, a field guide to identifying political buffoons, available right now on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and other online bookstores. Hacks in media don't care about the news. They care about the journalism of action. It was called yellow journalism at the turn of the 20th century. It's now called, it's got the same connotation, but it's more about the buffoonery of putting yourself in the story and creating a beautiful narrative for yourself and for your point of view, your partisan point of view, which is what Jim Acosta did throughout the Trump years when he was covering the White House for CNN. We all remember the stories about him stealing microphones from people at press conferences, getting called out from the podium by the press secretaries, whether it was Sarah Huckabee Sanders or anybody else who was there, Kayleigh McEnany. He was always the buffoon that was trying to bait the Trump administration into responses. He opted for the bait instead of reporting. He made the stories about himself. For example, I remember one instance, I think it was like February of 2019, when Jim Acosta was reporting from North Korea, when Donald Trump went over to North Korea to establish relations with Kim Jong-un. And he was lamenting how, he didn't call on me and he avoided the White House press pool instead of opting to ask questions of, taking questions rather, from the journalists from the international pool, which ended up being not true. Jim Acosta was just butthurt, and he was constantly butthurt by Donald Trump and the way that he was treated during his administration, because he thought that he could act as buffoonishly as he wanted to and not have any consequences from it. Jim Acosta is one of those self-important journalists. You know what? He's not even a journalist. Self-important reporter who has the audacity to act as if he is the main character of every narrative. He gives a bad name to the hardworking journalists out there who take their job more seriously than they do their hair and makeup, like Acosta does. Maybe that's why he's been reduced to a talking head on CNN. And Vivek Ramaswamy, who we talked about in the video about his appearance on The Breakfast Club and his incredible rap performance at the Iowa State Fair, he was ready for Acosta. He was all set to go with responses to virtually every sort of attack that he was going to bring. But predictably, the attacks weren't about Ramaswamy himself. It was about his positions on Donald Trump. Donald Trump lives rent-free in Jim Acosta's head and has done so for close to a decade now. Before we get to the interview, though, please smash that thumbs up button, like, comment, share the show with your friends, and please subscribe to the channel. We got big things coming on the channel. Let's get to the video and see how Ramaswamy just dismantles Acosta.
Whether he's there or not, and he's now facing his fourth criminal indictment, this time in Georgia on forgery, false statements, election fraud, and racketeering charges. You have said that these are political or politicized prosecutions, politicized persecutions through prosecution. Let's listen to what his former attorney general is saying about this.
People who defend him say that he genuinely did feel that he was robbed, and this was the good fight and the proper fight.
Well, even if he did, and I am dubious about that, but even if he believed that, that doesn't mean you can use illegal means to rectify it. If you think the bank is unfairly keeping your money, there are many things you can do to get it back. You can't go and rob the bank.
Yeah, what's your response to the former attorney general?
Look, I think there are deep legal flaws with this case. I'm talking to you from the Nixon Presidential Library, where I'm delivering a speech later tonight. We'll look at Nixon versus Fitzgerald. This is something that the press has altogether ignored. a president's acts while in office are something that he actually enjoys immunity for other than through the impeachment process. So if he believes, even incorrectly, that he was looking after election fraud, that alone could be a defense. I also think there are deep due process failures. Let's start with the fact that they actually, Fulton County, publicly posted the charges of the indictment even before the grand jury had signed them. That's a grave prosecutorial, bushy-tailed, overexcited mistake. That's a due process violation that itself could be grounds for a motion to dismiss. We also have to look at this prosecution in the context of the fact that there are 3 others, now 4 prosecutions in a series of months, all convening around a presidential election that sets a god-awful precedent, Jim, for this country. We do not want to become a nation where the party in power uses multiple different legal cases at the same time, pushing untested novel legal theories to knock out its opposition in the middle of a presidential election. That is not how we do things in the United States of America. And I say this as somebody who in many national polls is now polling second. It would be easier for me if Donald Trump were eliminated from competition. That is not how I want to win.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Ramaswamy has dismantled Jim Acosta's Trump allegations, and that's all they are, by the way, folks. They're just allegations. Indictments are just allegations. As Vivek is going to talk about later on, these are the strongest possible statements that a prosecution can make before a defendant can have an opportunity to respond to those. And he's dismantling Acosta's question with substantive answers, citing what he believes is the correct interpretation of the law, what he is citing as the correct interpretation of the political situation. Great answer. And I'm watching Acosta's face throughout this whole thing. He's just frustrated as heck with Ramaswamy, and it's showing.
I stand on the side
there
of
have been
principle,
four different.
not politics.
There are now 4 different
when I say
indictments.
we need to unite this country.
Yeah, let me jump in. There have been 4 different indictments. You don't think he's committed any crimes in any of these indictments?
I don't think any of the indictments have demonstrated that he committed a crime. No, and I've written on the pages of the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere wearing a technical legal hat, and you and I can go into that detail if you're
Refusing
interested.
to return
but
classified
I think these are clearly
documents?
politically motivated. Well, let's just take that one as an example.
Uh-oh. Jim Dunn stepped in it now.
That indictment made 0 mention of the Presidential Records Act, the most recently passed act that relates to a president, including an outgoing president's access to documents. The fact that this is a 49-page indictment, that one was, that was silent on that fact, reveals smacks of politicization. I also think that the fact that they used the Espionage Act, one of the most un-American acts in U.S. history, that has been used to round up anti-war activists, that was used to lock up Eugene V. Debs when he ran for
But do you
president.
think it's okay to have classified documents? You think it's
wrong.
okay for you to have classified documents laying around the Ramaswamy household?
Notice what Jim Acosta is doing here. He's pivoting from legal standards because Ramaswamy's got that covered. He's got a great deal of supported arguments in favor of Donald Trump, which Jim Acosta, frankly, wasn't prepared for. He wasn't prepared to push back on that. Otherwise, he would have been bringing up some legal analysis of his own. Now he's pivoting to, but is it right? And again, Vivek Ramaswamy has the perfect answer.
No, it's not. But I think that there's a difference between a bad judgment and a crime. And the Presidential Records Act expressly
But they came
gives
to
the
him and
U.S.
asked for the
president
documents
access to those
back, and he
records.
didn't return them. They asked for the documents back.
Again,
and he
I
just
would have made
refused.
very different judgments.
Yeah.
Look, Jim, I am running in the same race that Donald Trump is. So I'm not saying that every judgment he made was the same judgment I would make. In fact, it wasn't. But that is different from charging it as a crime, which I think sets an awful precedent in our country. If you want to get a little
But in the
technical
federal
about
election
it, Jim, I know
case,
you like
he
to go into
lied about
details
the
at
election.
times.
He tried to overturn the election results. Why not call him out for that as well?
I will remind.
By the way, notice what Acosta's doing here as well. The indictments are allegations of wrongdoing, of criminal wrongdoing. They are not conclusions of fact. The only time you have a conclusion of fact in a criminal matter is when a jury deliberates and returns with their findings of fact of guilty or not guilty. Jim Acosta has Donald Trump living so deeply set and rooted in his brain that the mere fact that allegations exist is enough to say he did it, that's it. I wonder if he would do the same thing with Hunter Biden. Just something to think about.
I'll remind you the Supreme Court's precedent in Alvarez, a 2012 case, which held that public officials, including politicians, have a First Amendment right to lie, to tell the truth, to even make statements they didn't believe, let alone the fact that there isn't a shred of evidence to suggest that Trump didn't even believe his own claims. And so we can get into the legal technical details all we want. That's going to happen in the courtroom. But as a matter of judgment, as somebody who is running to and expects to be the next president of the United States, my top job is to reunite this country. And my way of doing that is going to be to pardon Donald Trump on day one and to pardon really anybody else who was also the victim of a politically motivated persecution through prosecution. We have to move forward as a country.
Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. So Vivek Ramaswamy is transitioning to his own point now, that the nation needs to heal from all this partisan divisiveness that's been going on for many, many years, even predating the Trump administration. And Jim Acosta is against that.
But Mr. Ramaswamy, you just said you want to wait for all the details, the technical details to come out at trial, but you're declaring beforehand that you would pardon him. Why not listen for the facts to come out at trial and then make that determination?
I'm saying it based on one assumption. The assumption is that the statements in each of the indictments are the most prosecution favorable statements we're going to get. Any legal scholar would tell you that is a fair assumption. In any case, the prosecution always puts up its strongest foot in the indictment itself. We haven't even heard from the defense. So yes, if there are gaping surprises that come up, I mean, there's zero evidence to suggest that Trump was selling those secrets to foreign adversaries for private gain. But if those facts come up, of course, I would revisit my judgment. But the fact of the matter is the prosecution obviously makes the most aggressive statement of its case in the indictment. And assuming that's the case here, as it is in any other case, I will absolutely pardon Trump on day one, January 20th, 2025, when I'm in office.
He's 100% right about the strength of an indictment. It is the strongest document. The charging document in any criminal matter is indeed the strongest document. But Jim Acosta is going to keep pushing back on this point. It's like he's not even listening to Ramaswamy.
Would you pardon Trump's other alleged co-conspirators in both the documents and the election cases?
It depends on how the facts match up to the law. I mean, you take about the documents case. There are special features of the law that apply to a U.S. president. Literally, the Presidential Records Act treats past U.S. presidents.
But
the law
why say you would pardon Trump on day one, but not? But why say you're going to pardon Trump on day one, but not make that kind of blanket promise to the alleged co-conspirators?
He literally just answered that already. The laws as it applies to the President of the United States are different from the laws that would apply to any of the alleged co-conspirators who are not President of the United States. Jim, get it together here, man.
Shouldn't they get that kind of same pardon offer?
I'm favorably inclined. I'm favorably inclined to do it. But right now, I'm a competitor against Donald Trump in this primary, and I want to be very clear on the side of principle. Though it's against my interest in this race, that's why I think in the interest of uniting this country, it is especially important to be clear about that fact. I expect to maybe making tens of pardons on day one. I think there are countless Americans who have been the victims of politically motivated persecutions through prosecution. Peaceful protesters on January 6th, January 6th defendants who actually have had constitutional due process violations.
Vivek Ramaswamy is not afraid to go there with anyone on anything. He is a freaking rock star. Every time I see him, I am more and more impressed.
Julian Assange is someone I've specifically identified as somebody I would absolutely pardon. Ross Ulbricht, Douglas Mackey, others. But I think that the only way we're going to move forward as a country, there can be no reconciliation without truth. We have to put that past behind us. And my top job is going to be to heal the wounds of this nation to lead us forward. Because even look at the conversation
pardoning Trump is going to heal the wounds. Pardoning Trump is going to heal the wounds of the nation.
I do.
And there goes Jim's Trump derangement syndrome rearing its ugly head again. He's so hyper-focused on Donald Trump in this interview. This is supposed to be about Vivek Ramaswamy. It's not supposed to be about Donald Trump all the time. Vivek Ramaswamy is just crushing every single attempt Jim Acosta is making to make this about Orange Man bad.
I do think it will be a step towards healing the wounds of the nation. I think there are deep wounds in this country that are the consequence of systematic censorship, the weaponization of police force to accomplish political goals through the justice system. That is wrong. This is not an easy project ahead for the next president. I am in this race because I do see a lot of candidates on both sides motivated by vengeance and grievance. I am motivated by leading this nation forward. And the way we're going to do it is by restoring one standard of the rule of law for all Americans, restore the integrity of the justice system, and leave politics to politics. The people of this country should decide who the next president is. They're free to take into account all of the information that has been laid out by left-wing media, right-wing media, etc., to make their decisions.
What a beautiful personification of the 2 points that Vivek Ramaswamy has come up with in this interview. You have the personage of vengeance, of vindictiveness in Jim Acosta talking about punishing Donald Trump. And then you have the vision of moving forward, of forgiveness, of returning back to the best of America in Vivek Ramaswamy and what he just expressed. Look at the two faces. Which one would you think is the more hopeful, the more optimistic, the one with the vision for moving forward together as a nation? It's certainly not Jim Acosta.
I think Donald Trump made good decisions, and they should take that into account when voting him out. But that is not the basis for a prosecution.
What about Trump making these threats and making these kinds of inflammatory comments about the judge, about the special counsel, and so on, in some of these cases? Do you defend that? Should he knock that off?
So I'm not familiar with the specific nature of which inflammatory comment you're referring to or not. He's clearly deeply aggrieved by the fact that he's being prosecuted through 4 separate cases that have arisen at the same time in the middle of an election. Again, from my vantage point, I would make very different judgments and would have made very different judgments than Donald Trump. But that is a different point than saying this should be criminalized. That's where I'm at. So I'm not in this to defend
he says, I'm coming
Trump
after
or
you
anybody
if you're
else.
coming
I'm in this
after
to
me.
defend the nation.
But you've heard him say, you've heard how he said, I'm coming after you if you come after me. I mean, you've heard that, correct? Is that appropriate?
I mean, if he means that he's going to file a motion, if he means he's going to file a motion to dismiss, then he should absolutely file a motion to dismiss, which I think will be very embarrassing for the prosecutor and, frankly, very embarrassing for the entire law enforcement apparatus. If that's indeed granted.
But you don't think that's what he means when he says that?
I'm going to be very honest with you. I have not.
You've clearly
studied every word. Look, I'm going to be very honest with you, Jim. I have not read the specific tweet or social media post that you're referring to. I'm running for president. I'm looking at reviving our economy and declaring independence from China. I'm not parsing every social media post from every one of my other candidates.
And I'm especially not obsessed with Donald Trump as you are, Jim Acosta, which, if you heard that little dig from Vivek Ramaswamy saying, I'm not familiar with every single thing Donald Trump says, we all know who Jim Acosta is for sure, because that's what he's famous for. That's what he wrote an entire book about that, honestly, nobody read. That's what he continues to be about. He's riding a gravy train named Donald Trump.
Oh, I like money.
Yeah.
How many billions?
It's 80, Frito. It's $80 billion. That's a mighty big minus, isn't it?
Yeah. I like money, though.
Hey, Jim, we get it already. We understand you don't like Donald Trump. You want him to burn in Hades for the rest of his existence. We get it. But the rest of us have moved on. It's time to move on. Jim, my friend, listen. I'm looking right at you right now. It's time to move on. You're doing nobody a service by doing this. You're hurting yourself, your reputation, what's left of it. I mean, look, you went from being in the White House press pool to being, what, a weekend anchor with talking points or just another talking head? Look what it's done to you, Jim.
But broadly speaking, my whole point is there's a difference between a bad judgment and a crime. And the moment that we conflate
a lot of crimes start with bad judgments.
That is the moment that we have a threat to liberty.
Did he really just say that? I mean, seriously? Crime starts with bad judgment? Crime starts on many, many fronts. Bad judgment's one of them. Passion and reaction, impulse. These are all things that happen in the human condition. This is why he's a buffoon, folks.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay, but you actually have to have committed a crime to be prosecuted for one. So making a very bad judgment as a politician, that's a basis for a voter to make a decision. But that's how we've got to do things in the United States of America. We have to let the people of this country decide who actually runs the country, not a federal administrative police state. And I just think that sets a dangerous and deeply problematic precedent in this country. And that is why I've been so vocal against it. That is why I'm clearly committed to pardoning Donald Trump if he is convicted.
But you said earlier you would wait for the facts to come out. If there are some big surprises, you may.
We went through this already. He said it twice already. God, what a buffoon.
You're a fucking idiot. This needs to stop now.
My assumption is that the worst statement of the facts, the most prosecution favorable version of the facts, is in the indictment. In 99.9% of legal cases, that's exactly how it works in the United States. And I said that on day one when I made my commitment that that was my assumption.
And there you have it, folks. By the way, go seek out the full interview. They actually get to a couple of substantive points about China, Russia, Ukraine later on in the interview. The first 15 minutes of though is all Trump. It is literally all Trump. Vivek had to repeat himself, and thankfully he was consistent in the points that he made earlier and in the follow-up again. But Vivek Ramaswamy, and I can't wait to see him debate with other politicians on the stage this coming week. Vivek Ramaswamy showed that he's a real deal, man. He knows how to pivot. He knows how to answer directly, and he knows how to explain when he doesn't know something, what his assumptions are, and going forward, what his decision-making process will be. All great points from Ramaswamy, and just more of the buffoonery of Jim Acosta that we saw on display so prominently during the Trump years. So that's going to do it for this video, folks. Thanks again for watching. Please like, comment, share the show with your friends, and above all else, please subscribe to the channel. We're growing fast here. There's going to be lots of things coming. We're going to start doing some live shows. We're going to get some guests on to talk to you. It's not just going to be me talking anymore, which is wonderful, by the way. And keep coming back so we can have even more discussions like this, going over all the shenanigans and buffoonery that's going on this week in Dumbmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.